Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business.
Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. Joining Michael on the show today is Adam Oliver, who is the founder and CEO of Crafted, a product development consultancy employing over 26 people. Now, his clients include the U.S. Air Force, OnTech, Tribute Technology, and many more. And as you're about to hear, Michael and Adam discuss the challenges of balancing between having a robust sales pipeline and hiring pipeline, and why the two are essential for your growth. If you're looking to grow but are having trouble scaling from 6 to 7 figures, we can help. To work directly with the Consulting Success team and receive personalized coaching and support to help you grow and scale your firm, visit consultingsuccess.com/grow to learn more and apply today. Okay, so now let me tell you a little bit more about what you're going to learn in today's episode with Adam. The first is the secret to hiring effective remote employees, how to ensure a warm and balanced sales and hiring pipeline, how to win new clients using Adam's personal sales approach, how to thrive even during a recession, how to free up your time as a founder to grow your practice, and how to use case studies to back up your great growth. Here to share with you his insight and story is Adam Oliver. Enjoy.
Adam Oliver, welcome.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, no, excited for our conversation. Let's just get started and have you share, tell us what Crafted does.
Yeah, so Crafted is a product development consultancy. We're mostly located in Denver, Colorado. We've got probably 80 or 90% of our employees here, and then a few remote employees throughout the United States. And we're really just in business to help our clients ship SaaS software, mostly B2B SaaS and a little bit of B2C SaaS and mobile apps and things like that. But yeah, just a product development consultancy.
Yeah. So I know you're about 25, 26, give or take people right now. Is that about right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned 80, 90% are local to you in the kind of Denver, Colorado area, but obviously you have a percentage of people that are hybrid. Talk to me a little bit about the benefits that you see or how you as an owner, founder, think about when you're hiring, trying to get people that are close to you as opposed to being open to finding, people outside of your local area to hire and work with.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a good journey, and it's kind of one of the good side effects of COVID, that pre-COVID, we were pretty isolated to hey, let's start the business and grow in Denver, Colorado, and in the Front Range. And our network was here, our clientele was here, and things like that. So obviously it made sense. And pre-COVID, we were heavy on in-person collaboration, and there's a lot of in-office whiteboarding, sketching, doing all the product development things that people have seen. And then with COVID, pretty quickly, one, the in-office aspect shut down and the world went remote, but that also opened up all the doors to go remote for employee hiring and clients. So a good side effect was that, hey, now we knew a bunch of people in our network that were great engineers, great designers, PMs. We could open the door to go find them elsewhere and be opportunistic when we made those hires. And I think we still think of Crafted as being probably 75, 80% local, because we do, there's some strength in that in-person collaboration, getting together and building the team culture and really having that in-person aspect. But we're trying to embrace the hybrid and then trying to be very opportunistic with, if we know we've got some great people out, mostly in the United States that we can hire, we'd be kind of short-sighted not to go ahead and hire them in a remote fashion, fly them out to Denver whenever they want to and whenever they can join us to build that team aspect. But it's worked out great. And I think it's going to be the way that we continue to grow, 80% here and 20, 30% remote across the country.
Is there any position that you would not hire for remote? And then on the flip side, is there maybe any position that, you would definitely hire remote? Is there any kind of structure or framework that you have around which positions are better to be remote versus local?
Yeah, good question. I think I wouldn't say there's a definite no or yes in either of those. Again, trying to be very opportunistic. In our model, we are heavily weighted on engineers. So, right, you might bring one product manager, one designer, and then many engineers to a project. So what I have found is that perhaps having a product designer, product manager, and some of the core engineering team local is very beneficial. And they can run kind of the core aspects of collaboration and client engagement, while then you could have a additional engineers remote across the country. So I do think engineering, if you know you have people that can really crank it home and just get a lot of good software done, that's a very easy role to hire remote. I think we'll be more opportunistic on the design and PM side, just because that's a very collaborative role. There's typically only one of those per client, and there's just a lot that you can get done in person. So again, I wouldn't close the door to those being fully remote, but right now those are mostly in Denver.
And then my next question is, I'll plant the question, then I'll come back to this for a moment, but I'm really wondering, like, how do you decide when to go about hiring? And some of these questions are ones that I was thinking to ask you a little bit later on. Just going to try and kind of ease us into this. But since we're talking about team and hiring and all that right up front, I thought, well, let's just, it's right for this question to come right now. So I'm just interested in your experience, obviously building up a good sized team to this point. How do you personally think about, like, when is the right time to hire? Do you wait for a project to come in? Do you staff up and then go and sell? Like, where's your mindset as it relates to when the right time is to hire?
Yeah, what we've done historically, and we might change it just a little bit going forward, but historically, we've mostly sold the business and then have a hiring pipeline that is ready to support that. I find with my network, it's been easier to get the sale, and then you have people ready to jump on with Crafted when the time is right, and you have to keep that warm. So mostly being opportunistic there and hiring at the right time to fill client needs. And what we've done historically is, like, we've also leveraged contractors to help us with the ebbs and flows of the consulting world, which I'm sure many of the founders that listen to this experience. It's an up and down of a good sales pipeline and a good hiring pipeline. And getting those things to balance out at the right place and time is one of the tricks of our business. So what we've tried to do is never let one of those pipelines get too cold. Even if you're kind of fat and happy with consulting work and clients, you don't want to let the sales pipeline cool off. But conversely, if you have your project staffed and you're still trying to go sell, you don't want to let the hiring pipeline get really cold and have to start the momentum. So we try to keep them as warm as possible, and then we're ready to take advantage when the time's right.
And Adam, when you say keep them warm, I'd love if we could just go like a level deeper. Can you maybe offer an example of what that looks like, both on kind of sales marketing pipeline as well as the hiring pipeline, of an action that you would do or something that would actually happen that people could kind of see what that looks like?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll talk first to the hiring pipeline, since that's where we were, but we will keep our job postings up and kind of keep them greenfield on the job boards and things like that. What we'll occasionally do at that point, though, is maybe take down the more junior or mid-level postings and keep the senior level postings up there, and try to just, if the right person comes through, we'll go through with that. And then the other thing I'll do with the candidates that might be a good fit, I try to be very transparent with them. I'll start conversations. I'll let them know where we're at, but also not put them in a false kind of pretense of where we're hiring and say, hey, this might take a few months, or hey, you've done really well on the hiring process. We want you to be a part of the team. We're not quite there yet. We understand if you have to go take another opportunity, but let's stay in touch. Let's try to make this work as soon as we can make it work. And that way they know I'm not going to put them in a bad position, and I'm not going to put Crafted in a bad position. And that's worked out really well for us. And job applicants are really open and receptive and appreciative to that mindset.
But before we talk about the sales kind of marketing pipeline example there. So just to clarify, are you always hiring then? Like, do you have job postings up on different job boards essentially throughout the year, and you just keep keeping them up there? Or I'm just trying to get a sense of, are you always hiring, or is it just kind of throughout the year you put them up and take them down?
Yeah, we keep the postings up throughout the year. We try to do our best communication with those applicants that are coming through if it is slow.
Where do they go up? Like, are you using LinkedIn or Indeed or different niche specific kind of job boards, or where are you actually putting these job descriptions?
Yeah, so we use Jazz HR, and then that posts out to ZipRecruiter, Indeed, LinkedIn. And then we're big with like Built-in Colorado and builtin.com, if some people in the tech community have seen that. So yeah, they stay just ongoing, and that's what helps us keep it warm versus letting it go kind of ice cold. And that way we have some flow of applicants, and we can dig back into that stack of resumes when we need to and stay in the loop with them.
So do you just kind of like allocate a budget monthly, annually to keep those job postings up and live? Because some of the platforms, I guess, charge, some are free, but just take us inside. What does that look like? How much might you spend on an annual or monthly basis just to keep all these job postings alive?
Yeah. So then I was saying previously with LinkedIn, you could turn those on and turn them off when you wanted to. So we would definitely do that because there's more of a spend there. We would maybe spend $500 to $1,000 if we needed to kind of spike our resumes. So we don't use that as often now that we have Jazz HR. because it does some of that posting for us. Jazz HR is probably around $4,000 a year for a company the size of Crafted. Built in Colorado, which also does some kind of marketing and things, we probably spend around $10,000 or $12,000 a year with them. And I look at those as just almost, it's a recruiting spend, but I almost consider it marketing. Like I don't want to turn off marketing and I don't want to turn off sales when we talk about the sales pipeline. I also don't want to turn off those pipelines. So I consider that roughly 15 or so thousand a year. It just needs to be ongoing to keep things warm or hot and not let them get cold. Before we had some of those platforms, it was very much a hot or cold rush to go find the right person, or it goes ice cold. So we're trying to.
Are you the person on your team that is actually looking at these applications as they come in, or is this somebody else on your team that is doing this? And then how often is that person looking at them?
Yeah, definitely. So as it gets cold, we try to stay on top of them just to be respectful of the candidates and make sure we're giving a good experience. I'd say as we've grown, the first 3 to 4 years of Crafted, it was solely on me and a little bit on my partner, the CTO. I'd say now that we've grown to the 20 plus range, again to 25, absolutely now trying to delegate that to more of our head of product, our head of design, and our head of engineering, and start to delegate and spread out that work. Sometimes we'll get in there and do some of the initial pre-screening and sift through the resumes and say, hey, 100 resumes came in. I only need you guys to look at these 5 or 10, and we'll kind of weed it out. So at this moment, like with Crafted being a growing consultancy, it's kind of like who has the most bandwidth at the moment to take care of that stuff. But
is it being looked at like on a daily basis, monthly basis? Just roughly, what does that look like?
I would say right now it's more of an average of like weekly. And we'll go in, and when things get hot, it'll be more daily. If things get super cold, then it might slip to every 2 weeks or 4 weeks. But I'd say roughly weekly, we try to go see what's going on in those channels.
Makes sense. Okay. So let's then shift. You were talking about one of the other things that you never like to stop or to go cold is the sales/marketing pipeline, or maybe you have a clear difference in the way that you view both sales and marketing pipelines. Yeah. Could you offer an example in that area?
Yeah. And that is one we focus on even more and never let it get too cold. Because I mean, even if you're happy with where you're at as a consultancy, you need those next deals coming through, and you need a lot of them, especially now as we're facing this kind of shaky economy. So it's even more important that like, not only do you not let it cool, you should probably be doing whatever you can to heat it up by 5x. And at this point in Crafted's journey, I do consider the marketing and sales kind of the same flows because we're a small enough team. We're putting more and more focus on that, more marketing dollars behind it, various forms of outreach and thought leadership and things like that. But no, in consulting in general, but definitely in this day and age with the economy, super important to never let that thing cool. And we've had points in the Crafted journey where we've been very happy with our client base. It's kept our team in full. But even at that point, like you need a couple people looking out in the future and getting ready for those next steps for sure.
Yeah. And I'm smiling because this is a conversation that we have with our clients quite often, especially those that are more established. They're successful. They're feeling like they're in a really good place. They look kind of into the future of their calendars and the work they have booked. And they think to themselves, like, I don't really need any more leads. I'm good for a while. But inevitably, right, as you know, I can tell because the way that you're smiling too, it's then all of a sudden something happens, right? A client cancels, delays, pauses, ends early, just budgets get cut, whatever it might be. And pipeline that you felt really good about is feeling as good about it. And it's just a lot harder to kind of get things restarted as opposed to just making sure that you always keep that foot on the pedal and keep things moving along. So I'd love if we could shift. And I do want to come back to the marketing and hear a little bit more about what you are doing today specifically to build that pipeline, especially the comment around thinking like, how do you 5x or how do you take things to that next level during the kind of unstable or uncertain period that we're kind of in right now. But take us back to the beginning of Crafted. When you launched this business, how did you get the first few clients to come in?
Yeah. So initially, it was really just based on my network. I've been pretty rooted in the Denver community really my whole life. Born and raised here, went to college here, things like that. And then my career has been in and around Denver in the tech scene. So I've grown a pretty good network that I feel good about. And that was absolutely my first iteration of going at this by myself and going and talking to my network and saying, hey, do you need XYZ? It ended up being relatively easy initially. Getting those first few clients was just some good relationships. Great way to grow the business. And then after that, I brought on a partner who is a good buddy of mine from college. He had a similar size network in Denver, but it was also very different. So not a lot of overlap. So that kind of doubled our network power. A lot of great people in the tech space. So that was phenomenal. Second iteration of that was then our clients, our network, understanding what we could do, and they would go out and pitch Crafted for us, make introductions. If they heard somebody needed great product development consulting, they were happy to put our name in the mix, and that landed us a lot of deals. So those were kind of the first two rings. Now we're on this journey 100% of like, how do we get further beyond those rings, get into the like open market of people we don't necessarily know yet? And how do we start breaking down those doors and whatnot? And we're having some success there, definitely at the moment, battling through the economy. Because even if you have some success, budgets are tight, a lot more scrutiny. But no, now we're trying to get out beyond our first few rings of network. So
right. So you're kind of, if we put this into the context of LinkedIn, right? You started with your first degree connections, then secondary connections, and then now your work to get to the majority of the marketplace, which is the third degree connections, people that you don't actually have any connection with directly. I'd love if we could just hit rewind for a second. So you talked about the first degree connections of people that, just were in your network. That's where the initial business came from. When you and then your co-founder or partner that came in, when you were kind of soliciting or reaching out to that network or landing those first kind of several projects, how did that kind of come about? Like, were you going to events and meeting people and talking there? Were you sending emails? Were you picking up the phone and calling people? If you could just kind of take us back, what were you doing? And if it was by whatever format that message was, like, I'd just love to know what you were saying to people that really seemed to resonate with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my approach has always been very kind of personal. Again, talking to those first degree connections, it's easy to just say, hey, let's just go talk tech, right? Let's get together for coffee and beer and talk about our careers, talk about what you're doing, what Crafted's doing. And then pretty naturally it evolved into like, a lot of these people need technology help. And you would hear that come through pretty quickly. Like, hey, we're trying to achieve XYZ. We're struggling here. We need more value delivered. And it would pretty easily evolve into like, hey, do you or how do you think about external help in consultancies versus hiring full time and things like that?
And so would you ask that question, or they would kind of bring that up?
I would listen for like where they had pain points and what they were trying to do. Then I would explain what we do. And it pretty naturally evolved into like, it sounds like your team isn't executing something that Crafted could help you with. And then that's kind of the foot in the door to talk. And eventually you progress into like scoping a project and talking about budgets and things like that. I kept it as a pretty easy kind of friendly progression of like a sales flow. And it seemed to work pretty well.
When you think about that kind of initial outreach that you did to your network and those meetings, as well as then kind of the second ring, as you call it, or the secondary connections, the clients that you were working with who then would go out to their network and talk about how great Crafted was and the work that you all were doing, is there anything inside that you feel was like a bit of, not necessarily a special sauce, but just it really worked well, or it was key to generating more appointments or referrals or conversations, just any kind of, anything that process that stands out that you feel just worked really well for you guys and maybe others don't do it as much as they should?
Yeah, I think initially keeping it friendly helped. Focusing on hearing what their business was trying to achieve, which I mean, that's a common sales thing. That's nothing new. But then what we could do and what we focused on was absolutely like, how can we help you be successful personally, but also your company? Because a lot of these people, like they might be a director or VP, they're trying to make career growth. And their way to get career growth is being successful with their company. So we would try to focus our messaging on how can we make you and your team successful, like as people, but also we'll deliver value for your company that you're trying to help grow. And then I think another thing that Crafted does that resonated with them is we are not a consultancy or an agency that kind of like sits in our office. You give us a project, we send it back. Part of our discipline or part of our methodology is we pair up with you very closely on your domain expertise with our product development expertise. I think that's really resonated in the market where they realize like, okay, because a lot of the pain points you'd hear is like, hey, we've tried this with an agency. We've tried this with an outsourced company and it doesn't go well.
Hey, it's Michael here, and we'll be right back to the podcast. But first, are you ready to grow, scale, and take your consulting business and marketing to the next level? If so, our Clarity Coaching program may be a great fit for you. You'll work with our experienced team to set up a strategic plan for your business and coach you step by step in areas like how to consistently attract more leads, develop a magnetic message that resonates with your ideal clients, strategically package and position your services, earn higher fees, win more proposals, and scale your business. To find out more about Clarity Coaching and apply, go to consultingsuccess.com and click on coaching.
What does that actually look like? When you say that, it piques my interest and I could see how that would be valuable and how many consultancies would do the exact opposite, right? Kind of just sit in their office or wherever it might be. And they're just sending kind of stuff back and forth. Or a very common one is that a firm might go in and create some really amazing recommendations, but then the client has real trouble implementing those recommendations. So I get what you're saying, but can you kind of share or paint that picture of what would that tangibly like look like? Why are you going to their offices, or how are you actually making that work?
Yeah. So like pre-COVID post, it looks a little different. Pre-COVID, it was a lot like, we're sitting in desk right next to each other and we're pairing on these problems and these solutions. We're PMs, designers, engineers. We're coming up with the solutions together, real live time. Post-COVID, it's a lot more Zoom, meeting in person when we can and when it makes sense. But we've had to learn how to use a lot of these great online tools very effectively and efficiently. But some of our roots in that, when we call it pairing, comes from what's called extreme programming back in the software development days, where two engineers sit together and they're literally typing on the same computer, writing code together. Definitely, that evolved over the last 10 or 20 years, but that's kind of the methodology we take. Like, let's get two designers just hashing stuff out together. And what that does with our clients is it absolutely blends their domain expertise with our product development expertise. And it closes that gap and that risk that they're not going to get what they think they get. And the other thing that you mentioned, Michael, is what we don't do is just do some consulting and then give you a recommendation, right? We don't give you a PowerPoint deck that says, hey, you should go build this technology. We get in there with them and it's like, no, it's not high level strategy and that type of stuff. It's let's get in here and build this software together. We're going to ship it all the way to production. That reduced some of that risk that they can't then implement what we're thinking about. It's like, no, we're implementing it together with you, and let's just get this thing in the hands of real users. So that helps us in that fashion.
Got it. That's helpful. Thanks for sharing that. And then you mentioned that you're kind of post-COVID, you're using tools now a lot more that allow you to collaborate or to work very closely with clients as opposed to going to meet with them. Of course, you'll still meet with them when you can. But what are some of those tools? Any favorites that you use at Crafted?
Yeah, these tools are going a long, long way and they've come up fast, but obviously Zoom is great for us. We use Zoom and there's a few other tools like it, but Zoom is great. Another one that we use a ton is Miro, which is real-time like whiteboard collaboration. A lot of great ways to do that. And then in the realm of like user research and user-centered design, there's a lot of great tools now where you can get a user on a live video stream and they can share their screen. They can show you the software they're working with. You get to see their face and their reactions and their emotions. So I think all those types of tools have come a long way to help that. And then on the engineering side, there's a lot of great ways to still do pair programming, do live code reviews, and close the gap on two engineers being in different locations and whatnot.
So on the marketing side, if we now kind of hit the fast forward button, take us to the current time, you mentioned that, you're trying a bunch of stuff. Some of it's working, some of it maybe isn't. If you were to identify what is working best for you, and just for everybody joining us, of course, what works best for you, Adam, doesn't mean it's going to work best for somebody else, but what is working best for you right now to generate high quality leads, fill the pipeline? What's actually generating results?
Yeah. So what I would say, and this has been in our roots, it's going to keep working for us and we need to evolve it, but 100% what's working is building relationships. Very personable, very connected relationships, letting newer relationships know that like we have value to give and we're happy to talk to you about it without like putting a contract in front of your face. If you're having problems with tech, let's just talk. We'll give you advice. We'll start to show you how we can bring you a different approach to that. And it evolves over time. But very much just building a very personal relationship where it doesn't feel only like business and it doesn't feel just like I'm pushing you into a contract and things like that. That's still my approach. It's been the thing that's worked with us the most. And showing, I think you have to prove two things. One, I do personally care about you and I'm making a great relationship with you and then we can add value. And then on the value side, it's like, we can do what we say we're going to do. So then it's kind of like, let's talk the talk enough to convince them that they need us, but then walk the walk. Day one, we get in there and we start collaborating on software and building and shipping software. So, because you can build great relationships, but then not execute. So obviously you have to back all that up with being a great consultancy, which I think we have the start of it crafted, but you just have to make sure that's evident with these people you're talking to.
And then, Adam, when you talk about building relationships or kind of nurturing or developing them further, are you referring to relationships with people that you already know? So these are either current clients, past clients, or people inside of your network? Or are you also using this approach in terms of kind of outbound, or some people might call it cold outreach, going to people that you have absolutely no relationship with yet? Who are you using this with?
Yeah, so I'd say anything from good friends and really close network connections And then you have a few rings, people I've known in the community. Maybe we don't get together all the time, but you can go nurture that relationship. They're the people that if you hit them up for coffee, lunches, beers, they're going to say yes. So yeah, absolutely. I'll go, let's go talk about whatever. So those are the first two rings. Those are great to kind of nurture and just keep going. And then I'd say getting onto that like third ring that we're talking about is we do a lot of stuff in the community. So out in Denver, we have Denver Startup Week, which is a phenomenal week-long startup event. There's a lot of meetup groups that are pretty potent and have some good things. We'll go and do talks at those meetup events. We'll host happy hours where we're kind of the sponsor of those happy hours. That's a great way to meet people and just have really good, deep conversation about technology, about product development. And what usually spawns from there is that next level, like, hey, let's go get coffee. Let's go get lunch. And just, you give me advice, I'll give you advice. Let's just talk. We'll see where it goes. But that's a great way to build a relationship where they know, like in Adam's team at Crafted, they're great people just to talk to. They will give us thoughts and advice. We'll walk away from the conversation with a lot to ponder, a lot to maybe stretch our thinking about. And then our whole motto is like, you plant the seeds and then you just keep watering the seeds, and who knows what will happen. And nothing but good things will happen.
So it sounds like you're not necessarily going, okay, here's 20 people that I've never met before, but I would absolutely love to work with. I'm going to reach out to them through email, LinkedIn, calls, whatever it might be, direct mail. That's not really what you're doing. It's more, I'm going to show up where I believe my ideal clients might be. I'm going to add as much value as I can. And from that, I'm going to develop relationships and then stay in touch with those people. Is that correct? Or are you actually doing the former as well?
We are doing some of the former as well. So kind of two different motions that we have there, but we absolutely have like HubSpot as an email marketing platform. We have a marketing person that's in charge of all of that kind of outbound outreach. So we are going after like targeted industries, targeted lists, and trying to nurture those. But I would consider those two different things. I'd say myself and my partner are great at the relationship building and more of the biz dev flow. And then we do have the marketing flow where it's like going after certain niche markets. We're testing things, trying different drip campaigns with emails. And that one's just a little more nebulous. It's harder one to figure out. You got to just, and we're just thinking about it as experiments. We're running a lot of experiments and seeing what kind of gets.
Would you say most of your results are coming from the networking and from kind of meeting face to face, building the relationships with people that you're meeting at events, as opposed to the direct outreach to people that you don't have a relationship with yet?
100%. At this point, literally 100% is
right.
That's a big goal that we have, is to get that other channel working for us. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Your website lists that you work with startups, growth stage companies, enterprise companies. It appears all industries. I know you mentioned the real focus around SaaS. That's a wide range, right? Going from startup to enterprise. I'm wondering, I guess, first of all, do you see that your revenue and profit comes more from one of those three than the other two? Or is there a kind of a breakdown of that inside your business?
Yeah, great question. And happy to be real transparent with the listeners on this one. We just had some good advisor sessions yesterday around this topic. And I'd say number of clients, probably 60% comes from that middle growth stage, right? 20% startup, 20% enterprise. Profit-wise, revenue-wise, I'd say 75% comes from the enterprise. Probably call it 70, probably 20% from the growth stage company, and 10. So revenue and profits is very different than the number of clients. And I think some advice I've been getting, and I think it'll be on the mind of the listeners, is like, where do you focus your attention? We have a lot of fun working with growth stage companies. They're nimble, they're agile, they're trying to double and triple their EBITDA. It's really an adrenaline-filled environment. Enterprises pay a lot of bills and have a lot to offer from that standpoint. They have a lot of complexities as well. But that is one of our next challenges, is figuring out, is it good to be more agnostic and be able to do anything? Or do we need to get more focused? And do we need to kind of pinpoint one of those segments more aggressively, especially with like that marketing outreach I'm talking about and things like that? So it is on our mind.
So when first of all, I appreciate you sharing kind of the breakdown. I think that's very helpful for people to kind of get a sense and a better look into that transparently. Based on those numbers, is there any reason that you would continue targeting or even mentioning startups, given that it's a smaller percentage of revenue and a much smaller percentage of profit?
Yeah, great question. Well, I think good advice I've gotten, and it's kind of where my gut has taken me, is that I don't think there's a reason to leave any of those segments out. You don't have to turn down work. Startups are a lot of fun to work with, right? When you have one or two founders and they get some funding, that is the most adrenaline-filled, fun work you can do. I think it's refreshing for the employee base to get to go do that. And we've had a couple of those in our portfolio, and it's still very profitable. So it's still at a good range. I think what it is for me is maybe you spend less time focusing and fishing for that work, and maybe certainly less marketing dollars there. And you focus more of that work on the growth stage, which can be a lot of fun, or you go after a few of those enterprise deals that can really like give you stability for a year or two at a time or more. So yeah, I don't think it's giving up on one, but where you focus a little bit.
We've talked about kind of pre and post pandemic. So one thing that I think everybody around the world has been dealing with in one form or another is higher inflation. Has that impacted your company? I'm sure it's impacted your clients in one form or another, but I guess what I'm really wondering is if it has impacted your company, any changes that you've made to deal with that?
Yeah, I'd say on like the employee side, on the Crafted side, it definitely has. There's been some roles we've tried to hire and, oh, wow, they're asking for a little more than I thought they were going to ask for, or can we absorb that salary? So you see a little bit of that. I think it's justified. I think some of that's getting countered at the moment with a lot of people being on the job market. So I think people realize before I could go be an engineer and get a 20 or 30% bump anywhere I want to go, they're having to be a little bit more competitive. So I'd say that's kind of leveling off just a bit. We've hired a couple of like operational roles. It kind of surprised us where we had our benchmark but we landed the right people. So that's the important thing. Yeah, it's with a bit of a premium, but we know they're awesome, right? And they're going to deliver value for the business. Then it's more my focus is not how do we tighten anything up, but more how do we leverage those people in exponential ways. So that's fine. If they're 10 or 20 or what, 1,000 more than you thought, well, that's great. How can you just leverage that to go make it worth 2 or 3 or 400,000 extra on revenue and stuff like that? So that's one aspect. On the economy side of clients, we're just seeing a lot more scrutiny with boards of directors, C-levels, where previously they wanted to do 5 or 10 projects and they really weren't asking about budgets. They're like, go get these 10 things done. And the teams were like, we don't know how we're going to do that. Now boards are seeing 10 priorities and they're like, don't do 6 of those. Do 4 and that's it, right? We need focus. So in a good way, it's getting businesses, especially tech businesses, to focus, which is something they probably should have done all along. On the downside is like sometimes that's at the cost of money that could be spent with consultancies like us.
Is there anything based on that and what you're seeing that has resulted in you making any changes to, for example, your messaging or how you go to the market or content that you're creating or maybe even services that you're providing?
Yeah, one thing we've heightened with kind of everybody else is our messaging and stuff around machine learning and AI. We have a background in that. We have a great portfolio of projects. We were probably admittedly behind the 8 ball on getting that kind of loud and proud on our website. So a bit of a miss. And we realized like, oh man, and I think what happened going back to part of our previous conversation is we were a little bit fat and happy with current work. Instead, what we should have been doing is being like, man, we should get ahead of this by a mile. And now we're like, well, shoot, we're not behind the wave, but we need to catch up and start surfing on this thing pretty quickly. So that's definitely one thing that's changed. And then the other thing that I think we're changing with the economy in front of us is making sure we have the right people doing the right jobs, which mainly means freeing up myself and my partner's time to go do as much biz dev and sales as we can. Because we just know to get the same number of deals we had this year, we're going to have to go do double or triple the amount of work to keep that the same for next year. Our assumption is that it's going to be a tough grind of a year that we really need to just be effective and efficient with our time.
And how do you view that? I mean, so some people, especially as they are growing a business and it's becoming more established, the focus kind of starts to shift from hustling and building to, I want to optimize my lifestyle. I don't want to have to work more hours. If anything, I want to be able to work less hours. How do you think about that? Because, I mean, you have a family, like just what's going through your mind when you look at that situation, that scenario? Are you fired up about having to go out and work a lot harder or spend a lot more time to build business? Or kind of take us inside your mindset a little bit for that.
Yeah. So I'm big on work-life balance for me and my team and want to do great things for our clients. We want to make great money for ourselves and for our team and all those things. We want to do that by kind of balancing it out. We don't want to kind of spend in a sloppy fashion and have no profits and we can all work 20 hours a week. That's not effective. At the same time, our approach has been grow and manage the burden until it gets a little bit painful and then solve for that next pain point before it gets too painful. You don't want to be underwater. You don't want to be working 100 hours a week. And we're right at that inflection point with Crafted where our current team could help us grow to about 20, 25 employees. And now we're like, hey, we could keep doing this and we could sustain the business as it is and not work too much, right? Have a good balance. But if we want to grow the business, get through the economy and grow it to 30 or 40 or 50 people, now is the time that we need to reinvest in that next level of kind of operational efficiencies, marketing efficiencies. They're going to be the next few hires that help us double the size of the business. Let us focus on biz dev and sales. So yeah, right now we're at that point where the pain was mounting just a little bit. Let's solve the pain and get ready for our next ability to double the business here.
Got it. Makes sense. All right. Just a few more questions before we wrap up. I'd love to know, since we're just talking about kind of offers, and especially because you do cater or at least work with, companies all the way from startups, growth to enterprise level. How do you think about pricing? What is your pricing structure? What does that range kind of look like? How do you actually set your fees and your pricing? Is there a specific kind of model that you use?
Yeah. So admittedly, it's myself and my partner kind of judging it kind of proposal to proposal. It doesn't vary very much, but hey, is the economy doing well? Is money abundant? Are we at a spot where we can grow? And then back up our rate growth with good case studies, right? We know, hey, when you have zero case studies, it's hard to charge a premium. When you've proven that you can do this for great companies, like, okay, you can start to inch your way up. But then to more specifically answer your question, what we try to do, Michael, is like, we don't want to be mixed in with the top consultancies like your McKinseys, your Deloittes, your Slaloms. One, they have a lot more clout than we do, admittedly, but we don't want to be mixed in. We're then like, wait, you guys are the same price as McKinsey? Like they're charging $500 an hour, which I don't agree with, but we don't want to be in that mix. We also don't want to be in the mix. Like I'm not going to send our people out into the world and make no money, work an hour for hour, and we're making zero profit. So we kind of price ourselves in the middle of the market for US based consultancies. Certainly know you can go to offshore or nearshore, and it's going to be very different. But all we do is speak to the differences in those models. And if our clients want to go with one of those models, that's fine, but they're just very different. They just need to understand the difference. We're not going to price ourselves out of a profit, and we're not going to price ourselves into some higher competition. Over time, we'll certainly try to increase that margin though.
And are you using kind of cost plus time, materials, and just making sure that you have a certain margin built into your pricing? Or is it more project based? Is it value based? How are you kind of thinking about that part of the pricing component?
Yeah. So everything we do is time and materials based scoping, right? So in the software world, it's a pretty bad idea to get into like fixed bid, fixed scope type of work. It just rarely works. It's one thing I've stayed heavily away from.
And is that because things always change, or you just don't really know what's going to happen until you get in there?
Exactly. It's been proven time and time again with bad case studies that just kind of blows up relationships and projects. And or all of a sudden you're doing a project for no profit and things like that. So we're just a time and materials and a blended hourly rate. Right. So that's one thing. Like we have a lot of great experienced people, but whether you're getting our most senior engineer or mid-level engineer, which they can all deliver and they're all fantastic, blended rate across the entire project, across all disciplines. And I think that's worked for me, and listeners can figure it out, is like, I've tried to stay very keenly away from complex structures. Hey, this resource is 400 an hour. This one's 120 an hour. This one's 300. And that's like, well, who are you giving me? Why are you giving me them? So half of your clients might want the cheap resources. Half of your clients might want only the most senior. And that just gets complicated and convoluted. I don't want them picking resources. And I also don't want to have to explain a complex structure of different price points. So just a blended rate, hourly, and it keeps it very simple and straightforward.
Makes sense. All right. Well, Adam, I want to thank you for coming on. Before we direct people to where they can learn more about you and Crafted, do you have a couple of minutes if I just go through a couple of final questions?
Absolutely.
All right. So you're running a company, 25 people, you have a family, a lot going on, right? No question there. Are there one or two habits, things you're doing on a regular basis that you feel contribute to your performance, to your, your clarity, your focus, just allow you to really show up in the way that you do?
Yeah, that's great. Like what I try to do when I'm doing it correctly, which sometimes it goes up and down, is working out. For me, it's getting outside. I trail run. I try to get to the gym. I make sure I'm eating right. That has a drag. One thing I've learned later in life is like being hungover is not a good state of mind. It's not for me. I don't deal with it well. So it's changed my thoughts on drinking. Not that I never have a cocktail and have some good social time, but I don't have time in my life to be hungover for a day. Right. So being smart about how I treat my body and my mind, getting good rest. I've never had a problem sleeping like some founders do. But making sure I do that. And I think the other one that's most important for me is like carving out the good time away from the job to be with my wife and my kids, don't let things distract me, be as present as I can be. And I have to work on it. I admit sometimes it goes away, but those are the things that keep me grounded. And then if I'm doing those things right, I can bring my full energy to the job and to the team.
Love it. And in the last 6 months or so, is there a book that you have read or listened to? Could be fiction or nonfiction, but just something that you enjoyed that you think others might as well?
Yeah, I love it. It actually goes to that question you just answered. So 2 books, Atomic Habits. I mean, it's been around a while. It's popular. Yep. But I love it. It's great. It gives me something to reflect about. And then the other one that our team just read, which is good for the consulting space, is Smart Brevity by the Axios team.
Right. Heard of it. Okay.
Yeah, pretty simple read. And some of it's like how that makes sense. But it's just a good thing to refresh yourself on, especially as consultants. It packs a punch and you're like, okay, am I communicating in a good, clear, concise way? So we've enjoyed that book.
All right. We will link those as well in the show notes. And then finally, Adam, again, just want to thank you for making time and coming on here today. Where should people go? The one place to learn more about you, about Crafted? What's the URL?
Yeah, check us out at www.crafted.solutions. So don't put a .com at the end of it. A lot of people try to put .com. So just crafted.solutions. And we appreciate it, Michael. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we'll have all that linked up then in the show notes. Thanks again for coming on, Adam.
Thank you, Michael. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to today's episode between Michael and Adam. If you enjoyed today's show, then be sure to hit that subscribe button wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And if you want to help support the podcast, you can do so by either sharing this episode out or by heading over to Apple Podcasts, where there you can leave a rating and review. A reminder to visit our episode page, which you can find at consultingsuccess.com, where there we have links to everything referenced in today's episode, including Adam's LinkedIn profile. Also, as a reminder, if you want to work directly with the Consulting Success team to receive personalized coaching and support to help you grow and scale your firm, visit consultingsuccess.com/grow to learn more and apply today. That's the end of the line for us this week. We'll be back next week with another episode. Until next time.